Again, I'm back with another question. I'm back with another question and answer session. Shall we move on to a question, Judy?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Does constructive journalism helps in revising the changes brought by negative news? There's a question from Ritvik Samuel Reggie. I repeat, does constructive journalism help in revising the changes brought by negative news?
It does. You know, when you look at the effects of the excess of negativity and the effects that it has, as I mentioned, you know, the first thing that most people feel is that it has a negative impact on their mood. And the second feeling is that they don't think there's anything they can do about it. And constructive journalism or solutions journalism, it combats both of those feelings because it does actually help you feel slightly better and shift your mindset, as Vero touched on as well. You know, when people are shown what's possible, they can re-engage in a way where they feel empowered to be able to do something about it. So it combats both of those things really well.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
We see a lot of negative news. Is there any way that we can deliver negative news in a way that still instills hope in people that's going to be fine? It's a question from Ram Gopal Harikrishnan. Should I repeat?
No, that's okay. I can see it on the screen. And it's a good question, and it's often something that's confused when you talk about solutions journalism, because we're not trying to manufacture a sense of hope. When you're faced with something truly devastating, you're not saying it's going to be fine, because you don't know. You know, it's not speculation and it's not guesswork. You're reporting on tangible progress being made in order for people to understand how issues are being dealt with. So you might be in this negative space where this problem is, but you can certainly look for where it's being done or where it's being solved, or even in small spaces, what's being done about it that's offering that hope. So it's not saying that despite everything that's going on, it's going to be fine. It's saying, let's look for what is working. Let's look for where it is being combated, because that naturally, if it is in existence, it naturally provides that hope. But you're not creating it to make people feel better. You're creating it because it's what's actually happening. And one of the side effects is that it can give us hope. But you've got to be careful not to do it the other way around, because otherwise it's kind of putting a silver lining on a situation. And that's not really its purpose. You know, you should actually fully investigate the problem, but you might recognize that's not where the story ends. And what can we, you know, the what next is where we look beyond it to see how it's being solved and how can we see a way out for this.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Next question is about curriculum designing. Please suggest how the Media Institute could design the syllabus to teach the students about constructive journalism. I repeat, please suggest how the Media Institutes could design their syllabus to teach students about constructive journalism.
Included in education, you know, when you go to journalism, and I've spoken at journalism schools as a guest lecturer, you know, I get an hour of their time in their 3-year course, and you think, well, actually, there's only so much I can offer in that time that they're going to be able to do something with. And so really in the same way that you have, and I think, you know, it is happening in some places, and Vero mentioned Solutions Journalism Network as well. They've got an enormously robust and reliable framework for how to deliver this. And I know Vero does as well herself to journalism students. But it has to get into the education system, because by the time you're going and doing training in media organizations, it's not been a part of their training. And so it's something new, and it needs to not be new. It's just good journalism, and it should be integrated in journalism education for sure.
Okay, next is a different aspect about constructive journalism. Do you think sometimes even constructive journalism need to take a stand, even though it may seem biased from outside. Abhiraj asks this question. Do you think sometimes even constructive journalism needs to take a stand even though it may seem biased from outside?
I'm just trying to deconstruct that question a little bit because, you know, journalism, when you're talking about solutions journalism, it's not necessarily activism. You're not trying to create support for something that you're reporting on necessarily. You know, you're reporting on it as you would any other story. And I'm assuming by that question, you're saying that other forms of journalism does take a stand. It looks at an issue or maybe expresses opinion. I wouldn't like to answer the question incorrectly, and I'm not entirely sure the meaning behind it. But I think, you know, the principles applied to reporting on solutions should be exactly the same rigor and investigative lens and objectivity that any good form of journalism has. It's just that you're looking at it from a slightly different angle and you're coming at it from a slightly different perspective. And it's powerful, you know, as again, sorry to keep referencing back and stealing Vero's work on this, but it holds power to account. You know, you can make a stand. It is powerful. Because if you are seeing someone doing something in response to a problem that's become kind of accepted as just permanent and unsolvable in your particular area, well, when you see people making progress, it's a really powerful disruptive narrative to say, well, it can actually be temporary because we've seen that it's partially solvable or even completely solvable. So it's a really powerful way to actually force a problem onto the public's agenda in a way that actually re-engages people and energizes people to care about it again, rather than this kind of desensitized acceptance that we have, or this apathy, whatever you want to call it, to kind of just existing amongst problems.
So now I move to the last question. Do you think the working ethics of journalists today are compromised for money?
So I wouldn't like to sound overly skeptical on this. And as I said, you know, I come from a very consumer side of things. And so the way in which I would answer that, and in my book, You Are What You Read, the last chapter is the power to change. So it's what we can do as consumers to create a much more integrity-led and helpful news environment. And one of those ways is to pay for content, because what they're providing is really valuable to us. And we have to make sure that we see the value in that and we support it. Because if we're not, other people are. Advertisers, you know, whoever they're getting their funding from, they may have an agenda and it may compromise the integrity of the storytelling. And even if it's sponsored content, sometimes, especially with native advertising in our current media environment, it can be very difficult as a consumer to distinguish between what's a paid story and what's a genuine news story. So one of my recommendations that I speak about when I talk about supporting good quality journalism is, you know, valuing it enough to pay for it. And for all of these reasons that I've mentioned before about how the news makes you feel, you know, it's not necessarily a good thing that it's free. You know, if someone said to you, you can have all the food in the world, you'll never be hungry again, you don't have to pay a penny for food ever again, but it's going to make you sick. It's not actually going to make you that well, and you're not going to be healthier as a result. You know, would you take that option? And the chances are probably not. And so we want to consume information to our mind is exactly the same as food is to our body. It's important that we understand the effect that it has on us. It's important that we're deliberate with what we put in. And it's important that we value and can help support an industry that will give us that value and the stuff that's good for us.
Thank you for your valuable responses. You shared a lot of information. Now I move my position, and now Manjunas will talk to you.
Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. That was a great session. from a great person with lot of positive energy that evokes optimism in the hearts of upcoming generation of journalists. And this energy will give the world credible, positive, solutions-based journalism and journalists. Wishing you great success and thank you for being with us. We look forward to having you for more sessions. And now we are concluding. The democracy depends on citizens having reliable, accurate facts put in a meaningful context. In a world of information explosion, accuracy is the foundation of journalism. The loyalty of the journalist must be to the society, and we should portray facts with solutions. Media educators need to train the future journalists to expand their knowledge and make them practice long form of journalism. It is also essential for the journalists to adopt, adapt, and excel in the digital world. We also need to be aware how algorithm-driven content can undermine the quality of journalism. Media researchers should focus more on understanding the changing preferences of media consumers, their attitude, behavior, and also decision-making process in the democratic system. We hope the sessions have benefited participants, even though we exceeded some time, to understand the challenges with fake news, misinformation, and sensationalism. This is a long journey. We need your support to make journalism great. On behalf of the speakers and Team Kreisnagar, we express our sincere gratitude for joining us. For the kind information of the participants, e-certificates will be issued to those who participate in the webinar and submit the feedback form. We have sent you the link for feedback form. We will be sharing a copy of UNESCO's Handbook of Journalism, Fake News and Disinformation e-book for all participants. Good evening and stay safe. Team Kreisnagar, Maranellur, Trivandrum.